From LA to Piscataway, you've come to the right place to talk all things Big Ten. Welcome to Big Ten Ted Live.
Well, here we are. Welcome, everybody, to Big Ten Ted Live. Good morning. We are officially on Harbaugh Watch. Harbaugh Watch 2023 is in progress. Because, look, I'm working last night, high school football, last broadcast for the year at my full-time job. I don't get home until, 1 in the morning, working right now on 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. And I knew that Big Ten punishment possibly could happen on the Michigan side of things. And now things this morning, I wake up, I got Twitter, and I don't have a rundown. Okay, usually I have a list of topics. I have some bullet points, things that I want to hit throughout this show. No rundown today. I just got Twitter right here. I'm keeping an eye. I'm hitting that refresh button because that's where we are right now. Harbaugh Watch 2023. According to ESPN's Heather Dinich, it is possible that a suspension could possibly come down on the way to State College. This is crazy. This is Harbaugh Watch is in full effect. So I am going to have my weekly segment with Spencer Wagon of 1600 ESPN. That's going to be happening. 1600 ESPN. Here coming up. He's going to be calling in at about 9:15. So we're going to be talking about the games this week, week 11 games. We're going to be talking about this Michigan thing a little bit as well. So we're going to start off with that and then go on from there because, hey, believe it or not, we've got some good football games this week in the Big Ten. Of course, Michigan and Penn State really takes the cake at the top of this thing. And look, and I'm going to touch on this. I'm not going to try to give too much away because I want Spencer to really have the first crack at this. But I believe this Michigan-Penn State game could be, outside of Michigan and Ohio State at the end of the year, this Nittany Lions-Wolverines game could be the highest watched game possibly of the season when all is said and done. Like I said, outside of Buckeyes-Wolverines, because I think a lot of people right now, are tuning in to see really what happens with Michigan and Penn State, and see what happens with Harbaugh, see what happens with this matchup and everything as well. So thanks everybody for coming into Big Ten Ted Live this morning. Gerald McKinley is here. We've got Battles in the house, if that's who I think it is. Thanks for coming in. He's saying Minnesota over Purdue. That's what I have. There's a lot of games I think that could go back and forth right now. Minnesota Purdue is one of those. Of course, the Boilermakers getting that 20-10 victory last season. Of course, these teams look a lot different than they did exactly one season ago over there. But that's a thing where when I look at Minnesota, this is a team. I think Purdue is going to try to sell out on the run game. They're going to try to make Minnesota beat them through the air. I think there's been some. Because we know, regardless of who's been at running back this season for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, that they've had a pretty good go of it. Ethan has been fairly up and down. But then you look at Purdue. That's a team right now that is outside of bowl eligibility. Right? That ship has sailed as far as this season for the Purdue Boilermakers. So where's Purdue? This is going to be a big sign, I think, of where Ryan Walters and his program really sits right now. Can he continue to motivate this group and build for the future? I think that's going to be a big factor for the Boilermakers in this game. But Rutgers and Iowa, there's a lot of really solid games, some bowl eligibility games on the line. You got Maryland and Nebraska both sitting at 5-4. As well. Gerald also chimed in, and all those anti-Michigan fans right now are going to be on the Penn State side. I see some people out there picking Penn State in this game. And once again, I'll touch on this in my segment with Spencer But if all is fair in love and war, Michigan right now seems like the better team, right? But this is such an interesting game because post Connor Stalions suspension and now resignation, you've seen a 49-0 defeat of Michigan State, and then you had a bye week, and then you had 41-13 over Purdue, and that kind of goes into the rest of the season earlier in the year for Michigan, is that they just haven't had a lot of challenges, right? We know the talent that the Wolverines have on their football team, but this is the first big one. I said it in my preview early in the week. Go check it out on the channel if you haven't seen it yet. But this is the first big challenge, going on the road to Happy Valley. And Spencer and I are kind of really going to break down this game once this segment starts here in 10 minutes or so. But I'm really looking forward to this. I am really looking forward to this matchup. I think there's a lot of interesting things to look for. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So if you're coming in here for the first time, don't forget to hit subscribe to stay notified when live streams like this happen, video uploads, all that sort of stuff. On the channel this week, had a Michigan Penn State preview, also had an Oregon USC preview as well, right? 2 future Big Ten teams going at it at Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. That's going to be really fun to see as well. So we're going to be having our segment here in just a little bit with Spencer Wagon, 1600 ESPN, talking all things Week 11 as well as this Michigan situation. So remember, as we're talking about this with Michigan, it all comes down, right, because the Big Ten is the one that's making the move here. Big Ten, Tony Petitti, they're the ones that are making the move. The sportsmanship policy, that's what this all falls under. And, man, it's been a busy time for me lately, so I've been able to skim through. I saw some Michigan legislatures, some Michigan congressmen, things like that, put out a letter saying, let's think twice, which really, really struck me as odd, right, when you're seeing politicians come out. It's like, I just want to keep politics out of college football, but, you know, such is life. Such is life sometimes. And then I saw the letter from the lawyer and everything where some of this, they said some of this doesn't fall under the sportsmanship policy, but the sportsmanship policy also talks about the integrity of the game. So I don't know how those two things match up based on the letter that the law firm representing Michigan really sent out. So here's the thing with this. This is going to get, Michigan is in a situation where now they're pointing at Ohio State, they're pointing at Rutgers, they're pointing at Purdue, and it almost seems a situation where, okay, if we're going to go down, you're coming with us. Okay, like that. That's almost the way it seems right now. Okay. Whether that's what is actually happening, whether that's reality, TBD, but yeah, that's the way it seems right now for Michigan, what Michigan is doing right now. This is, and once again, I'll touch on this in my segment with Spencer. As far as the Big Ten is concerned, this is not good, right? This is not a good look. And I do not envy Tony Petitti right now, trying to balance all of these big brands right now. You got Michigan over here, and it seems like you got every other school in the conference over here. That's just the way it seems right now. But, man, just seeing this infighting, seeing this war. But it kind of originates with Michigan a little bit. You know, the more time that really goes by and the more time that ticks on, the more we really see, you know, Michigan is going to receive penalties. I think that's going to happen. When it will happen, which body, NCAA, the Big Ten, etc., which body is going to hand down those penalties, I think that is to be determined right now. But, man, it could get wild, because if you see a suspension, you got to imagine the University of Michigan and their lawyers are also on Harbaugh watch right now. Because if this thing happens, you know, because that's always been the talk from the start. Okay, if the Big Ten, right, the lawyers and the law team representing Michigan says, well, if you hand down a suspension, we're going to file an injunction, and then at that point, that would carry for the legal process would carry forward, and that might allow Jim Harbaugh to still coach. It's very clear to me right now. It's very clear. It's crystal clear what's happening right now with Michigan, what their administration is doing. They are trying their best to kick this can down the road. That's what they're doing right now. To try to keep Jim Harbaugh coaching as long as they can, to keep this team in the national championship hunt as long as they can, and then we'll see what happens after the season. So that's going to be very interesting to really see what happens over there. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy to really see what happens over there. But I'm certainly looking forward to it right now. So that's kind of where we stand with all of that. So I believe we've got Spencer with us right now. Spencer, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. It looks like we are all set to go for our segment.
Excellent. What's new?
Well, so far, nothing. We're all on Harbaugh watch right now, as suspensions could be handed down at any moment while we're recording this. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, obviously this is going to run in the afternoon, at least my segment. You run in the afternoon on 1600 ESPN here in Eastern Iowa. So, I mean, for our listeners that might be listening to this segment, we're talking as, we're anticipating suspensions being handed down from the Big Ten, or a suspension or something being handed down from the Big Ten. And, I heard a funny clip yesterday, us being here, an ESPN radio affiliate, Mike Greenberg from ESPN said, please, Big Ten, don't make this a Friday news dump. And then what does the Big Ten go and do? It's a Friday news dump with this Harbaugh news.
It certainly looks like it's going to be that way.
What do you anticipate happening, Ted? I mean, I feel like this is an interesting spot. We've said this all along. It's an interesting spot to be in for the Big Ten, because there's a lot of pressure facing Tony Petitti, right? Like, people are pressuring him to do something, and the Big Ten is kind of an interesting spot because Michigan is one of the conference's best hopes to make the college football playoff, and that means a lot of money coming in for the Big Ten. You don't want to cost your conference money, but I feel like at some point you have to address the elephant in the room, don't you?
Man, I do not envy Tony Petitti. He is stuck between two gigantic rocks and two gigantic hard places right now, because you've got one side of the conference, let's call it Michigan, right, over here, saying what they're saying right now. And then on the other side, you've got all of the other schools saying, like we heard about the coaches' meetings, the athletic directors' meetings, pounding their fists, saying, we want action. And then if you punish Michigan, right, they're going to come back with their legal team, it sounds like, and they're gonna raise some heck, right? So it's just, I don't know if you could, honestly, if you're Tony Petitti here, I don't know if you can do anything right. I honestly believe that, right? But he's got to sit down and he's got to do what he believes right. It all comes down to him, because if this happens today, right, en route to State College, like, this is going to be crazy. You got to think Michigan is at the ready to try to fight this legally, to maybe we don't see Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines this Saturday, but maybe beyond that. What is that for Maryland, for Ohio State? Maybe beyond that. It's because man, if this happens, you're going to see there's going to be a lot of dominoes that continue to fall, because Michigan's right. We've heard, hey, we got evidence of Ohio State, of Rutgers and Purdue kind of working together. So it's going to be nuts.
Do you think it ends up, and again, for people listening to this later in the day on 1600 ESPN, it sounds like it could be a 2-game suspension. It could be a 3-game suspension. Which of those options do you think it ends up being, Ted?
Oh, boy. Okay, so here's the deal. And I'm very intrigued in this, because the sportsmanship policy said Tony Petitti himself can act on basically level 1 of their sportsmanship policy, which is 2 games and $10,000 on the fine side of things. Heather Dinich was reporting this morning from ESPN 3 games, which tells me, because there's basically 2 levels to the sportsmanship policy. I just mentioned level 1. Level 2 is basically any other punishment as long as it is approved by their executive board comprised of athletic directors, administrators, other kind of folks within this conference. So I'm very curious, if we do get beyond those 2 games and a fine, what exactly it's going to be. Because in theory, according to the rules, that would have had to be approved by kind of this other group within the conference. So, man, that's going to be interesting to see. Because I did read the letter from the law firm representing Michigan right now, and they're saying, well, there's no evidence, because when in specifically talking about the Jim Harbaugh suspension piece, right? Oh, Jim Harbaugh has not been tied to all of this right now. There's no evidence that Jim Harbaugh knows about this, which appears to be true right now, right? From what we've heard, not only from Jim Harbaugh himself, the administration, from everybody, it appears that is true. So, but there's always a but that, you know who else said that? Pat Fitzgerald said that. I didn't know anything about hazing going on at Northwestern, right? Well, how many times over the course of NCAA scandals have we heard head coaches say, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. You know, we've heard that basically every scandal, you know? So, but we're at a point where if it falls within your program, if it happens and you're the head coach, you're responsible for it. Plain and simple. Right. Like that's just how it is. Like we don't have to go very far back. I think you can use that Northwestern suggestion. Like, there was a reporter, I can't remember when it was. I want to say it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe right after these reports kind of came out. In Harbaugh's press conference, the reporter asked Jim Harbaugh, and I'll see if I can remember this verbatim, but basically, to an extent, he said, as a head coach, asked him in his press conference to Jim Harbaugh, as a head coach, is it the head coach's responsibility to know everything within the program? And Harbaugh put on his dancing shoes and danced around that like a pro. But that's honestly the question, right? When you talk about a Jim Harbaugh suspension right now, you have to ask that. Does the Big Ten, is that how they're basing things off of? Do they have the evidence? Do they have the proof that these things happen? Maybe they don't have proof that Jim Harbaugh partook in it or was directly affiliated, but it happened within the roof of Schembechler Hall in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and thus he should be held responsible.
Yeah, I don't buy that argument at all from any head coach, not just Jim Harbaugh. It's just like, how do you not? You are the head coach. You are the CEO of the program, essentially, right? We talk about that all the time here in Iowa with Kirk Ferentz. Like, he knows like all of like these staff members, and you know, I'm speaking specifically about Kirk Ferentz. Like, you could ask him about, you know, this coach and what that coach does, this analyst, and he knows, right? Yeah. And that's the kind of person that he is. With Jim Harbaugh, to say like, well, yeah, you're the head coach of this football program, and you're like, oh, who's this guy? Well, I hired him as an analyst. I pay him what, $55,000 a year. I don't know what he does, huh? What are you talking about?
That's so. And here's another thing. And once we get into our segment, we can start talking about this. But it was so you're seeing like a lot of people have looked to these videos. Oh, look at Connor Stallions talking to Jesse Minter, talking to Sharon Moore, and you know, Connor Stallions, you know, is looking to the sidelines and he's seeing something, and then he tells it, and then you see Jim Harbaugh take one ear off of his headset and listen. Like, those videos by themselves do not incriminate Michigan. Okay, because in theory, okay, it does not appear that this happened with Michigan, by the way. In theory, those signals could have been obtained by the All-22, or however they were obtained, and then you're seeing what transpires. But you can't take that piece of video and, you know, incriminate them just solely based on that. You have to kind of connect certain puzzle pieces. there's like a piece over here, but then there's one missing, and then there's a piece kind of in the middle, and you need to base, okay, well, it looks like they went and they purchased tickets to go to these opposing venues, and now we're seeing him at this video, and Harbaugh, right? I don't think it's based on what we've seen, right? We've seen Jesse Minter, he's standing right next to some big decision makers. You just got to start connecting the dots a little bit. And now it looks like Connor Stallions, at first, I am going to, believe me, I will, whenever I'm wrong, I'll take the L. At first, I didn't think it was Connor Stallions on the Central Michigan sidelines. Well, it looks like he's got hair. Connor Stallions bald. We haven't heard anything hardly from Central Michigan as opposed to that. And boy, you kind of look at it more. I'm like, man, that looks as time goes by, that looks more like Connor Stallions, right? At the time, I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't understand the reasoning. This season, Michigan State, a down team, it just the dots didn't connect for me. They just didn't connect. But now, if it was not Connor Stallions, you've been in media, I've been in media, if that was not Connor Stallions, I believe within a couple of days, SID, sports relations, media relations, whatever, they'd probably come out and say, yep, wasn't on the credential list, whatever. But I think now the more time that goes by, I think they're trying to dig more into why did Connor Stallions appear on our sidelines, allegedly, in Central Michigan gear. How did that happen? I think that's why, that based on how long this thing is going, I think that's what that story is currently telling. Not 100%. It could still not be Connor Stallions. But man, it's just it's crazy. It's crazy what's going down right now.
Let's get into the on the field stuff. Ted, obviously Michigan does have a game to play this week. They're in Happy Valley against Penn State, best game in the conference, I think, this week. Can big game James Franklin pull off the upset of Michigan, or are the Wolverines gonna roll into Happy Valley with another sizable victory in your mind?
Well, this is interesting because here's the thing about this game, and you mentioned, right, the big game or lack of big game ability for James Franklin right now. That's one thing. I think that's maybe the thing that, usually in a normal circumstance, that would be the number one thing that people are focused in on right now. But obviously there's other things around this game right now. This is the one, it seems, that if James Franklin wants to get the monkey off of his back, this is the one he has to win, right? Because we are in a situation right now where there's a lot of people around that are getting up and putting on their Penn State hats and rooting for Penn State, right? And they are wanting, based on what's happening with Michigan right now. Michigan it's ironic that this week that the Nature Boy Ric Flair visited the Michigan program, because right now I believe Michigan is the ultimate wrestling bad guy right now. They are the ultimate heel. Everybody's yelling at them and saying, Michigan, those dirty cheaters. Michigan this and Michigan that. Everybody, they're booing them. They're jeering them right now. They're saying all these things about Michigan, right? Just like maybe the Nature Boy back in the day, I think everybody's going to be tuned into this game, and this one's going to draw money. Like back in the day, people came out to watch Ric Flair wrestle because they wanted to see him get beat. Everybody paid money to watch. Everybody came to the venue because they wanted to see the bad guy get theirs. And it almost seems that's what's happening, right, with Michigan right now. That's what's happening in this Michigan-Penn State game, is that I would not be surprised if this is maybe one of the top 2 or 3 highest watched games of the season, because people want to tune in to see Michigan go down to Penn State. But in terms of this game and breaking this one down, this is going to be difficult from what we've seen from the Penn State side of things. They really got to get going early. They got to get this crowd into this game fairly early on as well. Like they've got to get that. They got to make plays. They got to make plays right away. Got to make plays right away in this game, because if you let Michigan get on a roll early, you let J.J. McCarthy get in a rhythm, then you've got some issues. So that's the big thing for me. Michigan's run game up the middle hasn't been as good, I think, so far this season. So it's going to be very interesting, because I think we've seen in the past, we've seen teams run on Penn State up the middle, right? We've seen Michigan, like last year, kind of go up the middle against them. Is Michigan going to be able to get that run game going kind of a little bit? And then you look at Penn State. They got to make some plays down the field. I think they got to stretch the field a little bit. I know that's been kind of something that's been talked about a lot with James Franklin right now. And he's kind of, at times he's kind of been mocking it in practice. Chuck it deep, right? But eventually you got to make those plays. You got to make those plays at some point in time. So this is going to be a very interesting game. If Penn State comes out on the winning end of this one, I think a lot of narratives type of flip, because Michigan, right, that would drop them out of the top 4. I think people think really differently about Penn State if they get going back in this one. This one's got some juice behind it, and I can't wait to see it.
All right, let's pivot. Excuse me, to a completely different game, probably Iowa and Rutgers. Ted, I feel like this could be another like 6-3, 9-6, 7-2 type of game. Rutgers, I think, is the best team left on Iowa's schedule. Maybe Nebraska, you can make an argument for them, but Iowa's in the driver's seat after the chaos we saw last week in the West. Can they hold on to it? We'll see. But it's not a great Rutgers team, but it's a good Rutgers team, and Iowa's got to be ready, don't you think?
Iowa has to be ready. Here's the thing with Rutgers. Gavin Wimsatt can't turn the ball over, right? That's obviously the big thing right now for the Scarlet Knights, is they need to keep an eye on it, because when they turn it over, when Wimsatt pick sixes, right? You look at Wisconsin game, you look at the Michigan game, he needs to take care of the football. That's got to be the ultimate preaching within this Rutgers locker room right now, is you have to protect the football, especially against the Ball Hawkeyes. You know they're going to look to take the football away in this matchup with the Scarlet Knights. But when I look at this for Iowa right now, when I look at this for the Iowa Hawkeyes, when you start on, this is going to be tough, I think, on offense. I think it all starts with running the football. You have to be able to run the football in this Rutgers defense. That's going to be no easy task. This is a great Rutgers defense. Like, look what happened against Northwestern, right? They played a great game against the Iowa Hawkeyes, right? Close game, all the kind of what we expected, right, between the Hawkeyes and the Wildcats over there. But when I look at this, I think Rutgers is a better defense. I think a much better defense than what Northwestern has over there. I think it's going to be difficult to run the football. Rutgers has linebackers that can find the football. And then we all know about the passing game. Deacon Hill made one good throw, and it was maybe the most important throw of the game. Can we get more of that? That was Caleb Brown's very first catch of the season. Are we going to see more of that down the field for the Iowa Hawkeyes? I think that's a decent question that needs to be asked right now for this Iowa team. But yeah, it's going to be, I know this is typical stuff, but it's going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes, right? Deacon Hill at times, right? You saw in the Northwestern, he's kind of scrambling outside of the pocket. When he should have gone down for a sack, he chucks it up and it's nearly intercepted. You saw the fumble against Minnesota that led to points. When we talk about Gavin Wimsatt, yeah, he's turned the football over. You also got to talk about Deacon Hill, I think, for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Who gets that turnover? Who gets the defensive touchdown? I think I had my final score as 17-9 Iowa, and I factored in a defensive touchdown because Gavin Wimsatt has been prone to turn the football over and create that opportunity for an opposing defense right now. But yeah, this is the most difficult challenge probably on the schedule remaining for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Illinois is such a roller coaster. It could be a more difficult challenge. You just don't know. I think right now for Illinois, but when I look at this thing for Rutgers, this game, I think Iowa, yeah, if they can't run the ball, they're going to have a tough time. But then again, you look back at Northwestern, right? And they weren't exactly great running the football in that game either, and they still found a way to win. Does anybody find ways to win better than the Iowa Hawkeyes? I don't know. I think Iowa comes out on top. Kinnick has got to be an advantage as well in this one. It's hard for me, as good of a season right now as Rutgers is having, and as much as the turnaround is happening right now, I just don't. It's hard for me to imagine the Scarlet Knights going into Iowa City and beating the Hawkeyes at Kinnick.
The only other ranked team in action this weekend in the Big Ten, Ted, is Ohio State, still number 1 in the CFP rankings. They got Michigan State and Columbus. The odds makers have the Buckeyes as like a 30-plus point favorite in this one. I don't think this Michigan State team is any good. I saw them play against Iowa, and they played Iowa tough, but I think that had more to do with Cade McNamara getting hurt and the struggles on offense for the Hawkeyes than anything. But does Sparty keep it close in Columbus, or are we going to finally see Ohio State kind of lay the hammer on a Big Ten team, something they haven't done all that much this year?
Yeah, this is not Ohio State where they come out and they're slinging it with Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. That's not what this Buckeye team is, okay? And that was okay, right? I think there's some people within Big Ten circles, Ohio State circles, and look, Kyle McCord, yeah, he hasn't been great. He's missed throws at times, all of that stuff. There's no question about that. But this is a different Ohio State team. This is an Ohio State team that I think excels when they run the football first, when Trevion Henderson gets going. He might be the best running back in the Big Ten. I know Blake Corum is up there. I know there's a lot of other really good talent, but Trevion Henderson, since he's come back from injury, he's been really good back there in the run game as well. And I think when they run the football better, that opens up things. You get better matchups out on the perimeter. You get better matchups on the outside in this passing game. Like, don't look, I know Michigan State is not having a good season. I know ever since the Mel Tucker stuff went down, it's been hard for Harlan Barnett to really kind of keep this group intact. You had Simeon Barrow enter the transfer portal, and then he withdrew. It's just been a weird year for Michigan State. But this is not a bad defense. Out of all of the if you count this, let's for the sake of this conversation, let's count this as a Mel Tucker season, okay? This is probably the best defense of the Mel Tucker era that they've had. So it wouldn't surprise me if you get 10-3 midway through the second quarter in favor of Ohio State. Like, look what happened in the game for the Buckeyes against Wisconsin, right? And Wisconsin is out there with a backup quarterback in Braden Locke. Now, I will say this. I don't believe Michigan State is going to have close to any success moving the ball against the Buckeyes, right? They might get a field goal here. They might get a late garbage touchdown there, something like that. But I just don't see them, because this Ohio State front is really, really good. They're going to get after it in the pass rush. They're going to get after it against the run as well. It's just, might it be close for a little bit? Maybe. But in terms of the entire game, yeah, Ohio State is eventually going to run away with this one.
What else stands out to you this week in the Big Ten? That's some kind of, I guess, meh matchups the rest of the way in the conference. The two that I guess are closest from a point spread perspective, Purdue, a slight favorite over Minnesota. Kind of surprised at that, to be honest. And then Maryland on the road at Nebraska, a slight favorite as well. Last I checked, yeah, Terps a 2 to 2.5 point favorite in Lincoln. Anything else stand out to you in particular for the rest of the Big Ten slate this week, Ted?
Well, yeah, if you kind of look at some of the matchups here this week, how about Maryland, Nebraska? Both of those teams currently sit at 5-4. Okay, so the winner of that game is going to a bowl game. All right, so that's kind of one thing that I think we need to watch out for in this one as well. That's going to be a very interesting matchup because Maryland's offensive line is letting anybody through, right? That's just like you look at the past couple of weeks, you look at that game against Northwestern, you look at that game where they allowed 6 sacks, you look at Penn State where they allowed 6 sacks as well. So it's going to be tough for Maryland because Nebraska, you know, I think that they're going to look at what Maryland is doing and they're going to look to dial up the pressure big time against this Maryland offensive line. So this game, right, we've seen the highs and we've seen the lows of the Maryland Terrapins. Right now, Maryland has lost 4 straight games going back to when they were undefeated entering that game against Ohio State, their first loss of the season there to the Buckeyes. And they've really started to fall down, right? Their play in the trenches, it's not as good maybe as it was early in the season. And maybe that how they looked maybe early in the season, and now that they've gotten more into Big Ten play, maybe you're starting to see what Maryland was really like in the trenches, so to speak. But Nebraska, I talked about this about an earlier game. You got to protect the football. You got to protect the football right now. If you can't protect the football, you're going to have some problems, because they've had problems. Heinrich Harburg turning the football over. Some of these running backs have put the ball on the ground. If Nebraska can take care of the football, they can play a tough, physical defensive battle, and they can win this game. But I could also see kind of Maryland kind of going over the top and getting some yards, scoring some points as well. Minnesota, Purdue, you talked about that one as well, where I maybe see the Gophers having a good time of that against the Boilermakers, even though, like, where is Purdue? Where are they fighting right now? Okay, because they are outside of bowl eligibility. Is Ryan Walters preaching to his guys that, hey, let's get this going in the right direction. Let's build for the future. I want guys that are going to be here for the next few years, and then let's see where kind of things progress from there. So Northwestern, Wisconsin, another tricky game. I picked Wisconsin by 7, but I didn't feel good doing it because, if we don't see Braylon Allen on the field, look what happened last week against Indiana. Northwestern might be a better team than Indiana. It helps them being in Madison at Camp Randall, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if David Braun gets it done and Northwestern gets a win.
Indiana, Illinois, the last matchup, Ted, to Tom Allen, I think, he's safe for another week, but I'm kind of surprised. I'm not necessarily surprised that they beat Wisconsin just because of what you mentioned with Braylon Allen out. And I think Chimere Dike didn't play either last week in that game. Illinois, they've, like you've talked about before, been kind of a roller coaster of a season here for the Illini, coming off that big win over Minnesota. What do you see in that one?
Here's the thing about Tom Allen and Indiana right now, okay? Because Tom Allen was very clearly on the hot seat there for a while, and things were kind of going downhill. But this team continues to fight. This team continues to claw. Brendan Sorsby appears to be better, right? Taven Jackson looks like he's a little bit young. He's got a lot of things to learn maybe. Maybe his time is down the road, possibly at Indiana. But you look at this matchup, you look at this game, this is kind of put your arms up, put your shoulders up, shrug, because you could see this game. Both of these teams have had inconsistencies so far this season. I could see either one of these teams winning, but I will say this about Illinois. This is a team that has gotten better since the emergence of their freshman running back, Caden Feagin. Once big, bruising freshman running back, you saw him get out of the backfield, catch a long pass down the sideline for a touchdown against Minnesota last week. Now that so much of the rushing attack is off the shoulders of Luke Altmaier, and now they've got a running back that can really come in and do some things. At the beginning of the season, I said, I don't know about Reggie Love. I don't know about Josh McCray. Now that they have a guy back there in Feagin that can really tote the rock and can at least take some pressure off of Luke Altmaier, that puts Luke in a position to kind of do better throwing the football. And we'll see where he's at injury-wise. Of course, John Paddock, the Illinois legacy, obviously leading them down the field. He was a transfer from Ball State, so he's definitely got some experience in there as well. So I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen here in this game, because I think you could see a lot of unpredictable things happen. Right now, it looks like Illinois, right, having Johnny Newton back for a full game, and you got to imagine Newton is going to wreak havoc on Indiana. I just think Illinois has a little bit more. You never count out. I know there were folks that put Illinois at the bottom of their Big Ten power rankings, and I get that, right, earlier in the season. I was kind of right there with them. But this latest resurgence for Illinois proves you can't leave out, you can't doubt a Brett Bielema coach football team, right? Right. Brett Bielema will always find a way back to try to get some wins.
All right, Ted, I got to run. Thanks for the conversation as always.
All right. Good stuff. All right, so that was our 1600 ESPN segment with Spencer Wagon over there. Some very interesting games here this weekend, no doubt about that. So looking forward to everything that's going on here this weekend. So looking at Twitter here, trying to keep the refresh button. We have not heard anything as far as a suspension from Jim Harbaugh right now. It does not appear. Right, I don't know if things are going to happen today. Even though some people said something could happen today, yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. This would be, man, it would be interesting, maybe a little bit weird, but if a suspension came down today. But according to Heather Didinch, the timing didn't really matter. It was when if the Big Ten had the information. And when they were ready to possibly hand down punishment, they would do it. Whether that was today, yesterday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever it would be, that's when it would happen. So, so we'll see exactly what happens from here on out. It's going to be very interesting to kind of follow this one as it progresses on through. So I want to thank everybody for coming aboard here this morning for this live stream as well. I see some stuff in the comments about this whole thing. It has provided something different, right, for this college football season. I'm excited about football. I like having, but this whole Michigan thing, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Because Michigan, obviously, I think is, well, maybe it's not terribly obvious. I should say that, because you got Ohio State that can go out there and win a national championship. Who knows if Penn State can kind of get back and do some things this week? But this is probably the best team to win a national championship for the Big Ten in a long time. How they got there, was it because of sign stealing? Maybe not. We just don't know, I think right now, how much of a competitive advantage it gave them. It appears that the operation that Connor Stallions had was more in-depth than some of the other sign-stealing operations that were out there within the Big Ten. So, yeah, I don't. We just don't know. I don't think. Well, we may never know just how much of a competitive advantage this was. Is it 7 points? Is it 14 points? Does it go more than that? Is it being able to get certain recruits, certain transfers into this thing? I'm not in a position to really evaluate that, because I don't think we know. We'll probably never know how many more signs, how much they were able to decipher other team signs as compared to other teams' operations, because I think that has to kind of go into it as well. So, that's just one thing to kind of keep an eye on over there throughout all of this. Let's get to some comments here from Billy Tuesday. He's got the Buckeye leaf in his logo. If Petitia really wanted to punish Michigan, he would suspend Minter and Moore. Very curious to see how Michigan would act if they went after the coordinators instead of the head coach. But like I said with Spencer and earlier on in this live stream, at the top, you got to know what's happening in your football program, right? Other coaches have been held responsible for other things that they claim not to know about. If this thing happened with Connor Stallions, the more this thing kind of goes down, it's hard for me to imagine that this guy's going rogue and just doing all. I think so. I'm not saying it was Harbaugh. I don't know who, but it seems like some other coaches knew about it. You got to think, right? They had original Washington Post report said that this video apparently ended up on a hard drive inside the Michigan building. So what happened from there, we don't know. We may never know when it comes down to this as well. So many things happening right now, folks. So many things happening with this Michigan situation. I got a lot going on today. I just wanted to pop on and do this live stream on the segment with Spencer. like I said, not working on too much sleep right now. So hopefully we'll be back this Saturday for watching Michigan and Penn State. It should be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Want to thank everybody for jumping on, having this discussion, listening to the discussion between Spencer and myself. So hoping to have a reaction of Penn State and Michigan after their game on Saturday as well, but kind of the next couple of days here in my world. So until next time, I'm Big Ten Ted. We will